Welcome to the Myself Wellness Podcast. I'm Charles Patti, the voice of Myself Wellness, along with my co-hosts Christina Thomas and Jamie Veneziale. 9 years ago, I began my journey to self-awareness and healing. Like many who have faced personal struggles, I felt lost and struggled to find lasting healing. It wasn't until I discovered alternative healing methods that I began to see a real change in my life. This show will help you unlock your true potential through healthy lifestyle practices and transformations. Join us as we explore personal stories, expert advice, and practical tips to help you step into your true potential and level up. Welcome to the Myself Wellness Podcast.
Welcome back to the Myself Wellness Podcast. I am very excited about today's show. We have Dustin Robinson on the show. He is a pioneer in the investment psychedelic space. He has a lot of experience with a bunch of different companies that I'm looking at here. And he's also leading Mr. Cannabis Law, Mr. Psychedelics Law, and he is really pioneering the space forward for psychedelic medicine. So thank you for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Grateful to be here today.
Yeah, man.
So I wanted to start off, you have a lot of things going on, like a lot of different things. For you, if you could summarize what you'd say your highest priority, what do you think it is for right now in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. My main focus is on the investing side with my investment fund, Eater Investments. So we deploy capital into early stage companies focused in mental and behavioral health with a specific focus on psychedelic medicine. I would say about 70% of our portfolio is related to psychedelics. That's our current fund, but we are planning to launch our next fund within the next few months, which will be more broadly focused on mental and behavioral health, and even like the intersection of mental and behavioral health with AI and technology and things like that. So we're ironing out our thesis for the next fund right now. And then next up would be my law firm, Lumalex Law. We mainly focus on like early to mid-sized companies, but we do all the full service for small to mid-sized companies. If you're a large company doing 100 million in revenue, you're probably going to work with a larger law firm. I previously worked at one of the big law firms, Holland and Knight, so I know how they operate. They're good for some of those larger companies, but the reason my law firm focuses on the small to mid-sized businesses is because there really was a void in the legal market on really giving them the support they needed. And then, third would be Mr. Cannabis Law, which is my cannabis consulting firm. And then Mr. Psychedelic Law is my nonprofit. Then I also have a venture studio, Nucleus, that launches like digital assets. But my main focus right now is really the investment fund. Second would be my law firm.
This guy's amazing.
Yeah. We're going to have to go through it. It's hard to, how do you stay, focused? How do you not allow, I can imagine with so many different plates running, you have to have a good support system around you to be able to manage it all.
Yeah, I mean, I've got an incredible team around me, and not only just my team, but also like my clients, like Charles, like they support me, my investors support me. So, I'm very fortunate that, oftentimes on clients, it's like, for lawyers, they're serving their clients, but I have such a good relationship with so many of my clients that it's like we really try to support each other as best we can. And same thing goes for my investors. I've always had the philosophy of if you just do people solid, it'll come back to you. And I just always try to do the right thing in business. And I've been very fortunate to have some really great people around me. But I will, in all honesty, it's hard because, you don't want to spread yourself too thin. And there's just so many opportunities. And I've gotten a lot better at saying no to things. Because, when, there's just so many things you can do. Also, like with my background as an attorney, a CPA, I have my real estate license, I'm an investor. So it's like there's opportunities all over the place. I live in South Florida, Miami. Sometimes people are trying to pull me into real estate deals. So, really the key for me is just making sure I'm using the highest and best use of my time and saying no, even if an opportunity sounds good. If it's not the highest and best use of my time, I'm going to say no to it.
I had been watching Dustin from afar, probably about maybe 4.5 years ago or something like that. And I was just watching him do so many amazing things, and he just seemed so driven, and he was such a voice for advocacy for people healing through psychedelic medicines. And I hit Dustin up one day through a Facebook Messenger, and I was just like, hey, man, I really appreciate what you're doing for the industry, and you're really crushing it out there. And it really like spawned this, this dialogue back and forth where I sat down with Christina and I'm like, listen, like I want to work with this guy so much. And so Christina and I jumped in the car and we drove to the other coast and we sat down and we had lunch and we chopped it up. And then by the end of the meeting, we were talking about Dustin helping represent us and stuff like that. And so it's like, it's been a true pleasure and honor to work with Dustin because he's doing so many amazing things. But like Dustin is just an all around really good guy too. And he like really cares about people. So it's like, it makes it that much nicer to work with somebody like that.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I remember after our first meeting with Charles, like he said, he reached out to me and we went and we had lunch. And it was, at the time, I really wasn't looking for like new clients or anything. It was really, at the time, actually really launching one of my next funds. But hearing Charles's passion for the industry and whatnot, I was just like, all right, I got to find a way to work with him. And, I feel like a lot of the ways I start to work with people is through the legal representation. But now at this point, we've done so many cool things together, whether it's events, panels, introduction to investors, potential, people that could work with him. I'm just trying to make connections for Charles in any way possible because, Charles has such passion for the industry and he's doing it for the right reason. And he's built, an incredible company with My Self Wellness. They're doing all the right things. Sometimes, I know he wants to see it grow even faster. Everyone always wants things to happen faster and quicker and bigger. But I think the pace at which he's going at is perfectly fine. And I think he's going to be very successful with what he's doing.
Thank you.
Speaking of pace, I want to take this a quick step back to your previous life in law, working for a roofing company. And I feel like I know very little bit about the roofing space, but it's a tricky, hairy, and very intense business. To transition into something like psychedelic healing and things like that, I feel like you're living in two worlds where roofing is more understood, but also just like the people that operate in that world are very me focused. So what was that transition like, and what sparked the transition from one to the next?
Yeah, well, I'll start with actually my transition into roofing because that was a big change myself. So I started off my legal career before law. I got my CPA and I worked at Deloitte. Then after law school, I worked at Holland & Knight and was very happy there. Great law firm. Was working under some of the top attorneys. Very grateful for my time there. But an opportunity came out to work, at a roofing manufacturing company. I was very young, probably must have been 27, 28 years old. I was very, very confident though. I did very well in law school. I was like, I could help run a business. So it was really more so that role at the roofing manufacturer was really an operations role. And I'll tell you, I got punched in the face my first couple of years because you realize, you could know all the accounting and legal stuff, but when you have, by the time I left, we had almost 100 employees. It's really about people. It's about how to manage people. And so it took quite a bit of time for me to kind of realize like, it's not all about me sitting behind a computer. I was so used to typing away and the hours I bill was, how I was being judged. And, in my first, 6 months there, I was like, I got to just crank out work. I'm a hard worker. And then very quickly I realized it was really about managing the people and the growth. And so, made a lot of bad decisions that I learned from during that time period and turned out to be very successful. Was there for 5 to 6 years. Totally different type of people I was dealing with. At Holland & Knight, we're dealing with huge, big corporations, suit and tie every day, roofing industry. It's like if I showed up with a polo, they're like, whoa, why is this guy so overdressed? So it was a total change of pace. But then I sold my interest in that. I guess it was like 5 or 6 years ago. And it was a pretty decent exit for me. And at that point, I really just want to take a year off and figure out like where my passion is and what should I do. At that point, I worked at a big law. I'd had the operational experience, managing a business with a lot of employees. We were doing about 40 million in revenue. So I felt like I just want to find what I'm passionate about. And so during that year off, I kind of got connected with some of my friends in the cannabis space that needed help doing a cannabis deal. And I did it for free. I was kind of just on my 1 year hiatus. I was like, yeah, I'll help you guys out. And it turned out to be way more complex than I expected because it was 2 companies from 2 different states and they had different cannabis laws. And trying to figure out how to put together the deal. It was one thing to understand like the M&A aspects of it. It's another thing to understand how the cannabis laws intersect with those M&A aspects. So once I did that deal, I got another referral for another cannabis deal. And before I knew it, I was just doing complex commercial transactions in the cannabis space. I hadn't even really started a law firm or anything. And so I was like, oh crap, I didn't expect to get back into law, but I was like, I'm getting all this deal flow to do these transactions. So I started my law firm, never with the intention, like I want to grow some big law firm, but it gave me the opportunity to meet a lot of really great people. Then I started seeing some of the stuff going on in the psychedelic industry. We represent a lot of doctors and clinics. They started sharing some of the research with me about 4 or 5 years ago on what was going on. I started reading that research. At the time, never even tried a psychedelic. So I was like kind of blown away by what I was reading. I kind of carried the stigma with me for my first, 34 years of life. And then I'm reading this incredible research on it. And so started investing some capital still before I even tried any of these compounds. Eventually, I had my own journeys, and since then, I've had plenty of other journeys, kind of exploring the use of psychedelic medicines and mind expansion and levels of consciousness and stuff like that. And just got very passionate about it. And really, this was all sort of kind of during COVID, and you were having this huge issue with mental health, and everyone was talking about it. Mental health was just it's just horrible. And so I thought it was an opportunity really to kind of address one of the largest problems society is facing is mental health. So I started looking at other stuff as well. So we've invested in like VR for various mental health treatments. We've invested in different technologies, AI stuff. So really now, where my passion lies is really trying to help solve what I believe is the world's largest problem, which is mental and behavioral health. And the current pharmaceuticals just aren't quite cutting it, at least for most people. So I think there's, a real opportunity to do good, but also make money at the same time.
It's interesting to be in a perspective of, I obviously don't know if you were struggling with your mental health or not, but being approached by the psychedelic space, having the stigma that you had. And you said, the experiences with it, but you also talked about mind expansion. That's the thing that I'm really interested to understand as somebody who hasn't really dabbled in it as well. Can you talk about what that did for your professional, personal life, that mind expansion through those processes?
Yeah, it was interesting when I first started like getting into the mental health space, and even when I was first pitching my fund to investors, I would kind of say I would always make a line that now I cringe at. I would say like, look, I've never suffered with any mental health issues, but if reading this research, it looks really good, and from the experience I've had with it, the way it changed my mindset and helped me see a different perspective, I can see how it could help someone with mental health. But now I cringe at that line because the reality is we all struggle with mental health. I was raised in a family where it was like, don't complain. We played sports. We were kind of macho. It's like, if you're having a bad day, you just keep pushing forward. You don't even sit and acknowledge that you're down or anything like that. So you just keep pushing forward, which I actually think served me. And I think it serves others. I think sometimes people are almost like try to get too in touch with their emotions. It's like, it's like you don't want to be so aware of every little issue that you have, but at the same time, it's important that you are aware when you're having, maybe not so good a day, you're feeling a little down, because that's the only way you could address it. Don't let that define you, though. I think so many people like they get diagnosed with some sort of indication like depression and PTSD, and it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy where they tell themselves that, and they just kind of feed into it, and it's this vicious circle. So for me, doing the compounds, or practicing with the compounds was really just mind expansive for me. So really my interest originally was not so much in just mental health. It was really like, how can we help the well, not just the unwell, right? Because even the well could expand their mind, could expand their perspective, expand their consciousness, get a better grasp and understanding for what's going on in this world. So I think like the end goal, what I really would love to get to is a place where we have a proper protocol and we have a proper regulatory framework for not just the unwell, but also for the well. But the first step, we have to take care of the people most vulnerable in this society. And those are the people who are really struggling. And once we could prove that these medicines help people that are struggling with treatment-resistant depression, PTSD, major depressive disorder, once we prove that these compounds are safe and efficacious for that group of individuals, I think society will start to get more accepting on the idea of these compounds being used for the well in addition to the unwell.
You know, I always get asked this question, and it's like, who's a good candidate for psychedelic therapy? And like, listen, like, I'm not going to sit here and try to say, you know, every single person out there should be taking psychedelics. But the fact is that everybody's been through something traumatic in their life, some sort of like a loss of a loved one, or, you know, something that happened when you were a kid or something like that, where it's like a lot, you know, a lot of people, and especially men, you know, back to with what Dustin was talking about, it's like we're programmed to, you know, don't show any emotions, just keep moving forward. It's like, you know, don't complain about anything, just keep moving forward, you know, and that's life kind of thing. And I honestly, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it, there aren't too many people out there that I don't think couldn't benefit from a profound psychedelic experience. And listen, like, you know, I always say, like, I can talk depression and anxiety and PTSD, and I can sit here and talk about neuroplasticity till the cows come home. But the fact is like, this movement at the end of the day, from more of a bird's eye kind of view for me, is about the transformation of humanity to a higher state of consciousness. And I really think that like psychedelic medicines are the catalyst that's actually going to be like the one thing that can really accomplish that for people. I mean, people, you know, like there's gurus and, you know, enlightened masters and stuff, and they'll tell you meditation is the answer. And I'm actually in agreement with that. But the fact is that I feel like taking psychedelic compounds is like meditation on steroids. And so it like expedites the process, and it's, I wouldn't want to call it like a cheat code, but it's definitely like a fast forward button through the process.
Yeah, and I think you know, it's psychedelic. We all have issues. We're all imperfect. You know, we're all imperfect beings. So it's not just about like, are you depressed or do you have PTSD? It's about having a mindset where you're always just trying to grow as an individual, right? So whether it be psychedelics, meditation, breath work, you know, some app on your phone that gives you, you know, feedback on mood. There's all these AI things that now could track your text messages and things like that to see if you're maybe in a negative state of mind, and they'll kind of give you like a notification. So I think it's really just about individuals being willing and open to improve themselves. That's what it's really all about. Whether, you know, you're clinically diagnosed with something or not, we all could be better human beings. Just because you have muscles doesn't mean you're not going to go to the gym, right? You want to get stronger, you want to, you know, build muscle, get more lean, be healthier, have better cardiovascular health. And so I think, you know, just like you want to improve your physical health, you should always be looking to improve your mental, spiritual, and emotional health as well.
I recently this weekend was doing a little bit of work on trying to understand the psychedelic experience as a whole from a mental capacity. And they talked about this compartmentalization of the mind when we're under stress. So our brain kind of compartmentalizes and it's not working. The left hemisphere and the right hemisphere are not working cohesively together. You're just basically kind of ping-ponging off of each other, and that creates a very laser focus. Now, that focus in a lot of cases does breed success in business, in these different arenas that we all participate in day-to-day life. But the complete assimilation of both of your hemispheres and being able to work as one, what was that experience like the first time that you got to see that? And was there like an aha moment of like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that I could get to this state mentally?
Yeah, well, just to touch on something you said, you know, I think, you know, psychedelics are powerful compounds, and like this is why you really need the right support, because they could also lead you in the wrong directions. I've, you know, met people that are so enlightened and they've done so much psychedelics that it's like they don't even have the motivation to work. They're like, why am I going to work? Like, life is beautiful. And it's like that they might be so enlightened and that might be the better way, but also, you know, in this universe we live in and the way the world works, you kind of need to work and you need to do certain things, right? So I think it's important to use them in the right capacity and know when maybe they might be veering you off into the wrong direction potentially, right? So I think that they're very good. You mentioned like laser focused. And I would say my first time, my first experience was with psilocybin, and it was with, I have a life coach I've worked with for a very long time. He had a lot of experience with psychedelics, and we went out to a park and kind of had an experience out there. And what I realized is like I was so focused on just like the work I had in front of me, like my personal and business life. And I thought I was focused on like the right things, but it really helped me zoom out and realize like I should be doing way bigger stuff. And
Mm.
that was part of what inspired me to launch my investment fund. It was like my I was representing and helping people and companies and investment funds start businesses or invest into businesses. And I'd hit my single or double, making a decent amount of money in the deal, but then some other guy who I was representing would make millions of dollars on the deal, and I'm like, wait a second, like what does he have that I don't? Nothing. Like I can do this myself. So I think for me, just personally, it really helped me just zoom out and be like, whoa, like you got to reassess what you're doing here and what is the highest and best use of your time and how could you have the biggest impact on society. And so that's how it was personally, just from my first experience, helpful. It really didn't have anything to do with like, seeing any trauma or depression or anything. It really was the aha moment where I was like, okay, like I've been way too laser focused, like on like these specific things that are right in front of me, but there's a whole world of opportunities beyond that. And it helped me really step back and realize that.
Mm.
I love that answer. Like, I talk about this stuff a lot where it's like you have these massive epiphanies when you take psychedelic compounds, whether it's like removing the filters or, just kind of like guiding you in the right direction. And then that goes back to the Alan Watts saying that I use all the time, where it's like psychedelic medicines are like a telephone receiver. It's like you pick up the receiver, you put it to your ear, you listen to the message, and then it's important to put the receiver back down and apply what you've learned to your life, and like,
Yeah.
not get lost in the sauce basically, or keep on taking it over and over again and waiting for another message to come through before you've actually even utilized the first message. And like, I don't know, I like with what you said a lot too about how like people will take psychedelics and then they'll have this enlightened experience and they become so enlightened where they lose their motivation because everything's perfect and life is just so beautiful. And it's like, I don't know, I feel like in a way I got a lot of the answers I needed from taking psychedelics, but it almost did the opposite for me because it tapped me into how powerful we really are and what we can manifest. And so it's like, I don't want to just have a perfect life for myself like that. I feel like once you've actually tapped into these answers and this universal knowledge, that now you have like a bigger responsibility and like you actually have to do something with that. So it's like manifest something that's going to end up helping tons of people rather than just being so happy in your own personal life,
Yeah, it's interesting to see people like you guys leading this revolution and going ahead, especially knowing that you had financial success beforehand. You had kind of found something where you could make a ton of money, but then that moment of, okay, wait a minute, there's a bigger fight to fight here. Did you have trouble after that getting back in the zone of like, okay, I got to put my head down and I got to get back to work? Was there was there a transition period between I have all this access to information and like yesterday I was doing a bunch of research into all of this expansion of the mind, manifestation, the project that the CIA did, which is the what was
MK Ultra?
No, it's the Monroe Institute. They did the basically
LSD or
they did basically they proved manifestation was real through this meditation series that the Monroe Institute put out. But once you start finding some of these answers and you start going a little bit deeper, it does give you this perspective of like, oh, wait a minute, what does actually matter? Like, what is this? So I could see people getting lost in that sauce a little bit. Did you feel that? Was there any transition period between it?
No, not for me. I mean, for me, it honestly just gave me a lot of clarity of where I'm trying to go. I mean, I think a lot of people talk about like manifestation, like it's some sort of like magic. I mean, all it really is like if you don't know where you're trying to go, then you're not going to get there, right? Like you got to know where you're trying to go, and then you got to take the steps to get there, right? And I think really, I think a lot of people get lost in the manifestation part, like just manifest your future. No, that's where it starts. Then you need to execute on that manifestation. I think a lot of people are just like, oh, I'm going to manifest that I have, a huge mansion or whatever. And it's like, but they're not taking the steps to get there. It's like, no, that's not the way this works. If you want that big mansion and you want that executive role or whatever it is that you want to manifest, if you want to meet the love of your life, like you got to go out and wake up every single day and work towards it. And I think the problem with so many people, I'm just making up a statistic, but I would guess that like 99% of people, just from, me interacting with so many people, don't really know where they want to go. Like so many people are just lost. And I think that's part of why we have so many issues with mental health is at the end of the day, we all need purpose. I don't care how much money you have. I've met some of the wealthiest guys. In fact, some of the wealthiest guys who have had so much success are some of the most depressed guys because they have no more purpose. When you're a 50, 60, 70-year-old guy who's made hundreds of millions of dollars and you've lived your whole life with purpose, and now all of a sudden you're retired and you have no purpose, that's not a good life. So I think it's really important, from a manifestation perspective, like it's really about just finding purpose. Like this is what I want to achieve and then going out and achieving it. But the first step isn't as easy as it sounds. It's not, manifesting isn't, I want to have a mansion. That's not what manifesting is. Manifesting is really understanding like where you want to go and what it takes to get there, and then going out and actually doing it, waking up every day and being hyper focused on achieving that, and you will be able to get there. If you can't imagine it, you can't get there.
So true.
No, that was money right there. Because like the thing is like, listen, like you're not going to manifest the life of your dreams by sitting on the couch and meditating.
No.
Okay. And like, and it reminds me of this joke where it's like, this guy, he's like, on a boat, and he's out in the middle of the ocean. The boat ends up sinking. And so he's like floating in the water and he's praying to God. And he's like, God, he's like, please come rescue me, And then all of a sudden, like, a big ship starts passing by and they try to throw him a life raft. And he's like, no. God's going to save me. Okay. And then there's a helicopter and it's like circling around him. And he's like, no. God's going to save me. And then the guy ends up drowning and he gets to heaven or whatever you want to call it. And he's like, God, I was so faithful. I thought you were going to save me. What happened? And he's like, I sent you a boat and a helicopter and you didn't do anything about it. And it's like, so it's like without action, manifestations never come to fruition. You have to go out and chase after your dreams, or at least keep showing up with the right intentions and putting that positive energy out and then working your butt off the entire time.
One of the most profound books I ever read was The Laws of Success. And one of the sections it's about enthusiasm. And it talks about the idea of like the key to anything that you do is bringing a level of enthusiasm. Why is that? Like, if you think about that from a perspective of like, oh, if you walk in and you're happy, you're going to just create a world around you that's happy. But when you look at that from an energetic level, you're putting out all this very positive, it sounds crazy to say it, but not on this podcast, but you're putting out all these positive vibrations and frequencies. And then that makes everything else that you're doing so much more easy. But it's what people will do is they'll lie to themselves. They'll feel, oh, I don't want to do this. Okay, I got to put on a brave face. Oh, I'm so happy that I'm going. But in the back of their head, in that lack of presence, they're like, fuck this. I don't want to do this. This isn't what I want to do. And in a lot of cases, it is that gratitude or that perspective that actually gives you the shift. It's not, oh, fake it till you make it. That doesn't exist, because the only lie that you can tell to yourself is like, you won't believe any of the lies that you tell to yourself, truthfully, because you know in your core what you actually feel in that moment. So there is no fake it till you make it. Right. It's as simple as take one of my favorite moments that I've had building the company was I was miserable one day, really miserable. And Ben, one of our co-founders, met me in the office and he looked at me and he goes, I need you to take a second. What are you grateful for right now? And I'm like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, and he goes, no. what are you legitimately grateful for? I'm like, well, I'm grateful that I have 2 legs. I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for that. I go out on a run, clear my head, and the whole time, my whole mental framework is shifting while I'm running. Man, I'm so grateful. I have this energy. I have that energy. It was not like faking it. I had to replace that initial thought of, oh, woe is me with, man, I'm grateful enough that I get to have. And a lot of people will scoff at that and they'll be like, well, you don't get how hard my life is. And I'm like, did you wake up today? So cliche, but it's a real thing.
It's a mindset, man. Listen, you can always find something to be grateful in your life about. Okay. There's always somebody else that has it worse off than you. I mean, like, we're talking about the gym and fitness a lot and stuff like that. And it's like, my buddy Nick Stanstonato was born with no legs, 1 arm. And like, he's got this saying where it's like, victim or victor, right? And like, the guy's in the gym with 1 arm and no legs, crushing it. Like, and he loves to be there. He loves to do it. He's out there being grateful for the fact that he can even make it into the gym and get that kind of exercise. And so it's like, I always tell people when we're talking about things and people come to me for advice in this aspect, I'm like, for every really negative thought that you have, it's almost like you've got to counteract it with 2 or 3 positive ones. So it's like, if you find yourself in that loop where you're down about something, always go to that gratitude list. That's how I end my day every single day by, and then like, it's not like a religious thing or whatever, but I get on my knees and I look up and I'm just like, I am grateful. Thank you. Like, thank you for all of the positive things that I had happen in my life today. And not just that, but thank you for all of the hard things that I had to go through today too, because I know that there's no growth in the comfort zone. And I was growing as an individual through all of that. And then the first thing that I do when I open my eyes every morning is I say, thank you. I am grateful because here I am with another opportunity, another day that I just ended up here where I get to either grow more as an individual, learn more, be of service, help other people. And it's like, it really is a mindset, and it's like, and it's a shift of perspective, it's hard. Like, and I've been going through a lot of hoops lately where I'm having curveballs thrown at me left and right. And like, literally, I had so many curveballs thrown at me the other day, I like started getting dizzy when I was walking. And I'm just like, oh man, like, you know what? Like, I could sit here and cry about it and be like, oh my gosh, why me, poor me? Or like, wow, I just grew so much today. I'm really grateful for all of that.
Yeah, I say that there's no such thing as a bad experience. There's good experiences, and then there's experiences you learn from, right? So the same 2 people could have the same experience happen to them. One person sulks in it and lets it like destroy them. The other person learns from it and grows from it, right? It's a mindset. Once again, it's having that awareness and making something good out of something that might appear to be bad. And what's so interesting is that if you really think back at like some of the moments in your life in the past where you were like the most like stressed or you thought like the world was ending, when you reflect back on those moments, oftentimes those were transformational moments where you learn and you're so grateful in the future for them, whether it be getting fired from a job, breaking up with a spouse, even getting arrested, whatever it might be. In that moment, it was your whole world was crumbling down. And I've had those moments where I'm like, holy shit, the whole world is coming down. Those moments in my life, I look back on now and I'm like, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I'm so freaking grateful. So knowing that now in the present moment, when I have experiences where I'm like, oh my God, the world is crumbling. Like, what am I going to do? I'm like, 3 years from now, I will look back at this moment and be like, that was my opportunity to grow. I learned from it. I moved forward, and that's going to be a part of my story and, be a part of my success in the future. So it's not that it's literally things just happen in life. It's whether or not you're going to make something good out of it or you're going to let it just destroy you and own you.
When I first started working with Dustin, I had a deal I was working on, and it didn't end up going the way that I wanted to. And like, I remember I was on the phone with him, and I was like complaining, and I'm like, bro, oh my gosh, and I was like completely ripped apart about it. And he's like, listen, dude, he's like, in life, when things are going really good, it's not actually going as good as you think it is. And he's like, and when things are going really bad, he's like, it's not really going as bad as you think it is either. He's like, you just got to like take it for what it is, learn what you're going to learn from it, and just keep moving forward. And like that actually resonates. I still play that
I
through my
say
head.
that line all the time. You said it very well. I tell people that all the time. It's like things are don't get too high on the good stuff and don't get too low on the bad stuff. Like you just got to keep moving forward. I think one of the I would say skills that, or I don't know, something just about me that I think has really served me well is I just don't sweat stuff. Like shit happens and I just move forward. Like it just doesn't serve me or anyone else to like, sulk and sit there and worry about something that happened in the past. So shitty stuff happens all the time. Move on.
So that's interesting. I'm working on that currently. Coming from an athletic background, I'm extremely competitive to where a loss, whatever a loss is, whatever a mistake is, I am so hard on myself where Ryan will get on me. He'll be like, dude, that happened like 3 weeks ago. Like, what are you talking? Why are we still here? But it's, for me, what I used to use it as is, oh, this is fueling me. This is that power that gets me up in the morning and whatever. I recognize that after a long enough time, it's actually just an exhauster. It just makes you so tired because you're always, if you look for things to piss you off and things to motivate you, there is nothing short of plenty of those things. But what I found and what I've only learned, this is only learning, the source of love and the source of gratitude and all the things that we're talking about, like that is a bucket that you can always pull from. This other side, there's so much hair that comes with that again, I'm not great at it yet. I'm learning it. I'm trying to expand my mind in that way, but it's interesting. And I know former athletes can probably relate to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's funny when I was in high school, like people who know me from high school, I was like a hothead. Like if you looked at me, we were like, I was playing sports and like, I just like had a swagger, like do not look at me. And I was super competitive and, just honestly, just overly competitive. And it would, same thing. Like I lost a game or whatever, like it was hard to move on. But like, as you get older, you start to realize like only person you're competing with is yourself.
So true.
Like it's it. Like, everyone else has their own issues that they got to deal with. Competing against myself, as long as I know that I'm getting better every single day, my mind is at peace. I think that's like the most important thing. You're competing with yourself. Even like, people are like, oh, I wish I was, Tom Cruise or Leonardo DiCaprio, whoever the hell. Those guys have their own, it's all relative. And I guarantee you, in Tom Cruise's mind right now, he's got his own set of problems he's trying to deal with. You got to be happy with who you are, and just your only person you need to compete with is yourself. And like Charles was saying, taking care of yourself is taking care of others around you.
It is.
Right? I came from a family, my father was very overweight, and he always put his family first. He put his children before his wife and his wife before himself. And as a result, he wasn't the best father and he wasn't the best husband as a result. Not because he didn't want to be, he wanted to be. He was showing up to every one of my Little League games, but never went to the gym, never took care of himself, never fixed his own mental health issues. And as a result, he wasn't the father and the husband that he could have been. Still a great father. So it's really important that people recognize, like, if you can't take care of yourself, you can't be there for others.
Leadership, if I've learned anything, and again, it's relative my experience, but leadership is so much more about walking the talk than talking the talk. Like, you can tell, like, I used to have the coaches, overweight, run faster. That never landed with me. It was the coaches that had just got out of the league, and like my DB coaches always, they were super fit, and we'd run sprints, and they were kicking our ass up and down the field every single day. That right there was the propellant. He didn't need to say anything. He didn't need to say a word. He didn't need to say run faster. He would always just say, what's your excuse? What's your excuse? I played 10 years in the league. I did this. I did that. And it was, for me, just a great lesson of, like, leadership comes down to being the person that you're wanting others to be. And you can't do that without your own self-transformation. But not getting too far off that, talking about this journey of life and the idea of expanding your consciousness, expanding what you're able to see. How do you relate that to the things that we're talking about? Like when you connect with your own purpose, what was that like to then assimilate, this is my purpose and this is what I'm going to drive to, and here's why?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was just, finding my purpose. And you don't need to have just one purpose, right? Like I have purpose, but like every day I'm readjusting and realigning where I'm going. For me, it was, it just gave me motivation and reason to get up and just work towards it every single day of my life. Um, and, as far as like how that relates to being a leader, I mean, at the end of the day, psychedelics help you zoom out and realize like I need to do what's best for me. One of the things like we invested in a company, Beckley Retreats, which is an amazing 5-day retreat out in Jamaica. And I went out there and I did, a 5-day retreat. You have 2 days, you're in ceremony with psilocybin, you do breath work, meditation. And I would say the biggest benefit it had for me was that when I came home, they talk a lot about psychedelics, like you have this period of like neuroplasticity afterwards, and that's where the real magic happens. It's not like during the experience so much, but afterwards what you do with it. For me, it was the simple things like it was like the morning I got back, I drove to the gym and there was no parking spots, and I had to go to like the top of the garage, and I could feel myself getting like riled up and annoyed in my emotions, and I was able to catch myself though. It was the self-awareness that I was doing. Most people you just don't realize it, and you're just a miserable human being for the rest of the day, right?
Yeah.
But I caught him like, oh my God, it's a freaking parking spot. Relax. And I was able to transform that moment into a moment of gratitude. And then that same morning, I go get a smoothie every morning, and there was a long line at the smoothie place. I walk up and I'm like, oh shit. And and I could feel myself, and I was like, dude, like you can afford a $10 smoothie and you could walk your feet to the smoothie store, like be grateful.
Yeah.
And it just put a smile on my face. So I think part of like the negative mindset, the first step is being self-aware of it, right? Most people, they just have these negative thoughts and they don't even think about it. They just go about their day and they're miserable for the rest of the day. But really having that self-awareness, that's what that experience did for me at Beckley Retreats. Like for the days and the months after that, I just felt super self-aware of any negative emotions, and that allowed me to take a moment and address them right then and there, rather than letting that dictate the rest of my entire day.
I love that. I've never really thought about with what you just said so much as how it relates in my life, where I used to ruminate on things. Like let's rewind 15 years ago. If somebody said something to me I didn't like, for the next week, I'd be in the shower every morning plotting about next time I saw them in public, I'm going to run up on them or something like that. And I'm like visualizing it in my head and like, I'm going to get that person or whatever and stuff. Or like I'd have something that I went through that was unpleasant, and I would ruminate it over and over. It would be this repetition through my head, and then like I'd end up telling not one person about it, but then the next person I walked up to, I'm gonna tell them about it, and I kept reliving my traumas over and over again unnecessarily. Okay, and psychedelics made me have that, like I can take that step back now, and I'm like, whoa, stop, don't do that, because you're manifesting what you're focusing on, right? Like we all talked about, like what I'm focusing on and what I'm going after is what's actually going to happen and I'm going to accomplish in my life. So it's like, it gave me the ability to take a step back, and anytime and listen, I'm still an imperfect human being. I mean, I think we all are. This is like the evolution of everything, but it gave me the ability to take that step back and say, oh, you know what? I learned this from that situation that wasn't very pleasant for me. And that's what I actually needed to take away from that. It wasn't about that person. This was about what I needed to learn from that situation. Or if I catch myself repeatedly thinking of things over and over again, I get to take that step back and be like, no, positive thought. I'm going to shift this to a positive situation. And I don't think that I ever would have had the ability to do that if it wasn't for these kind of experiences that showed me that it really wasn't about me. Like that situation, it wasn't about like me being hurt by something else or taking the personalization that came with everything. It was more about the energetic lesson that I needed to learn from the situation.
And in a lot of cases, the thing that I think gratitude does, I had a moment a few months ago where I was stuck in this loop of what I didn't have. I'm going to be happy when. It's like the biggest trap that you pretty much can get yourself into. I'm going to be happy when this happens or that happens. Not satisfied. And I had a moment where I was like, I would love to bring heaven on earth. Whatever representation of that is, I would love to. Most people would hear that and they'd go, the next bad thing that happened to them and be like, oh, damn it. Like, but the reality is that's actually where it is. It's being able to look at it, a moment of what would normally get you caught up for weeks, and look at it and immediately find the lesson in it. That's, at least for me, what I started to understand that heaven on earth was. It wasn't this idea of everything is good all the time. It's the, even when it's bad, it's good. That's the real, I guess, test in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and I think, you know, once again, just using my family, you know, my father and my brother, you know, I would hear them like they'd get to like a stop. Like, of course, I get this only happens to me. Like there was so many instances where like bad stuff would happen, and it was like, oh, this, of course this happens to me, and it's like, oh, like there 1,000 good things could happen in the day, and one bad thing happens, and it's like you don't stop and say, oh, of course these good things happen to me, but that one bad, oh, of course that. Look, there's shit that happens all throughout the day. The problem is most people don't stop and appreciate the good stuff, but they let the bad stuff throw them all off their day. So it's like you gotta. It's not that the world is cursing you and this always, no, just stuff happens and you happen to be paying more attention to the bad stuff that's happening rather than all the amazing, great things that are happening around you.
I want to, from what Jamie said earlier about like, because I want to shift things just a little bit. From what Jamie said earlier, like people follow or respect people that actually walk the walk and don't just talk the talk. And like Dustin's one of, you know, like when it comes to fitness and healthy lifestyle practices and just well-being in general, he's definitely like one person that I admire because, you know, I see him, you know, I see the videos you post on social with, you know, your yoga, you're amazing. Like, you know, you're doing some of these moves that like, there's probably not too many people on the planet that can do. For somebody like you who actually embodies all of this, would you go over like some of the things that you practice to be where you're at?
Yeah. First off, I just want to say, you know, with respect to yoga, like there's certain things that you're naturally gifted at. Yoga was not one of them. So I've always been athletic and pretty strong in the gym. I couldn't touch my toes when I played sports in high school and college. And, you know, and I think it's being willing to lean into the stuff that you're not that good at, because being good at yoga has actually made me stronger in the gym and has been so good for my physical fitness. So, you know, and that is from literally 15 to 20 years of now doing yoga. Like it has taken a long time, and still there's, you know, I'm not that, there's a lot of people way better than I am, but like I'm pretty damn flexible at this point. I could do some moves that I would have never dreamt I was able to do. Some people are just naturally flexible, and that's great. Some are naturally, I am not. So if you're ever seeing me on social media doing some shit, that is straight from years of work. And the other thing I'll say is there is absolutely no shortcuts. Anyone selling you abs in 30 days or, you know, to take it outside physical fitness, you know, passive income, like like passive income. Everyone's got $1,000 course teaching you how to make passive income. No, you got to work your ass off to make income, right? Like there's ways to invest and have some passive income, but it starts with working hard and building your wealth. Yes, then you could start investing. But if that's the case, you're probably not going to spend $1,000 on some Instagram guy's course, right? So, you know, there's all these people who are sitting around that aren't, you know, they don't like their job. So they're trying to pay for a passive income course. And I see the same thing in physical fitness. It's like, you're not willing to do the hard work. You want to go buy like, abs in 30 days. And it's just not how it works. I wake up, I go to the gym every single day, 7 days a week. Of course, some weeks, maybe I might have to miss a day because something happens. But my goal every week is not to get in 4 days, not to get in 5 days. It's to get in 7 days. And I'm not always late. Some days I'm literally just going in there. I might just be rolling on a foam roller and stretching. It's not about like, it's just the act of getting in there keeps me mentally healthy. So I know when I wake up, there's no questions asked. I don't even give myself the opportunity. It's not a decision. My body automatically rolls out of bed, puts on my shoes, and I go to the gym. And I think just having that couple hours is just so important for your mental health. So I think it's like, don't make it a decision. You're going. Make it a habitual thing. Don't look at it as a chore. This is not a chore. You are blessed to be able to do that. And just have a good mindset that like health should be your highest priority. It really should be. I mean, it's amazing how many people make excuses of why they can't get into the gym. My gym is a part of my work. It's a part of my business. It's a part of everything. I am able to perform better at work. I have more energy. I'm able to be a better boyfriend to my girlfriend because I feel healthy and I feel good. So I think, that mindset of like, oh, I don't have time. Prioritize that. Look, sometimes some shit happens and you maybe can't make it a day or two, but you're never so busy that you can't make it for a full freaking week. Like that's just,
it's the truth.
Unacceptable. So consistency is extremely, extremely important. Just be consistent, consistently do it, and you will have results and you'll be a happier person. At the end of the day, like, yes, there's physical benefits and aesthetic benefits, but it's all about just feeling good about yourself. And I promise, your mental health will improve if you are consistently having some physical activity.
Yeah, man.
Idle hands are the devil's workshop. That's what it is. And I think it's so funny because what people will do, people don't realize how automatic we are as human beings. Like so much of our decisions, our processes are all autonomic. Very few of them are actually manually we're doing that. And what we can catch ourselves doing is if we give ourselves any space, we're automatically going to do the easiest thing possible. So let's say I'm coming home from work. I'm stressed. I'm really, really stressed. Automatically, if you've done this for a consistent amount of time, let's say we'll do both ends of it, the good side and the bad side. Bad side is, okay, I'm going home. I'm stressed out. I got to go binge eat. I'm going to go binge eat. I'm going to go smoke this J. I'm going to go sit down. I'm going to watch TV until it's time to pass out, wake up and do it all again. You don't even think it. It just happens. And on the flip side, the other way of dealing with that is I'm not even thinking. My shoes are on before I can even realize what's happening in the conscious moment. I'm already at the gym lifting weights or whatever your form of exercise is. But it's that replacement. It's not really any other. It starts with a conscious decision, but then over consistency, the fun part about consistency is it becomes automatic either way.
It's like make good habits habits, and for bad habits, become self-aware and don't allow them to be habits.
Mm-hmm.
Habits are things you don't think about.
Mm-hmm.
If you're self-aware when that parking spot isn't open and I got to drive to the top, like I'm habitually in a state of anxiety and stress, but the self-awareness, I'm able to kind of break that habitual reaction for negative habits. But yes, when it's a positive event, same thing goes. Wire your brain so it's not even a thought. You're not self-aware. There's nothing going on. Your default mode network is in full gear and you're just going to whatever the experience is that's a good habit. So that's how I see it.
I think that a lot of people are not only depressed, but just not satisfied in their lives because they know that they're not living up to their full potential. It's like, I know that was my story for a lot of years. It's like, I knew I was really overweight, and listen, I'm still continuously working on it, but like 100 pounds down later, just not having the drive to, or actually being too lazy, okay, to not go out and do the things that I knew that I was supposed to be doing and accomplish the things that I was supposed to be accomplishing. So like, I think that one thing that people really need to, check themselves on when it comes to mental health specifically, or just, quality of life is like, am I getting out and am I doing things? Am I going to the gym? Am I eating healthier? Am I making all of the right decisions in order to, because like what Dustin said, consistency and time and like, just repetition over and over again. Am I doing things that are leading me to a positive, healthy, happy place in my life? Or am I knowing that I should be doing these things, but not doing them and saying, oh, I'll start tomorrow kind of thing? And then 6 months down the road, I'm, 10 pounds heavier and I still feel like crap and I haven't made any, leaps, if anything, or not quantum leaps, but just like leaps at all in my life. I think that that's one thing that really people need to put into perspective when they don't have happiness or fulfillment in their life.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of what I'm saying, I feel like talks to the person who's getting to the gym like 2 to 3 days a week, but like could be getting better. But like just to talk to that person who is just struggling to get in the gym at all and is super overweight. I think like the best thing I've heard is kind of how Tom Brady talks about like when he's leading the team down the field, he breaks it down into chunks. When he's down by 28, he doesn't think like, oh shit, I got to go score 4 touchdowns to get back in this game. He's like 1 first down at a time, 1 first down at a time, 1 touchdown at a time. And slowly that builds up. And I think with like physical fitness and just happiness and mental health, like if you're struggling just take that first step and every day just take another step. You just got to like bite off small chunks of it. Cause if you're 200, if you're overweight, 300 pounds, whatever it might be, and you're struggling to get in and you're depressed and you're lonely, it just seems so much for the things I'm saying. 7 days a week, consistent for 20 years. You're like, holy shit. Like, I don't want to scare people off. Like if you're struggling, 1 step at a time, like just move forward, get better a little bit at a time. And that will turn into habits and you will eventually build up to where you want to be.
Something is always better than nothing. And that's the biggest lie that people tell themselves is they have a plan and they have what most happens, and it's happened to me. Listen, I've gone through waves with my health and wellness. There's been years that I've been the fittest I've ever been, and back in 2023, in June of 2023, I was at the lowest point I'd ever been, like coming off of a bunch of races that I had done, basically did the classic, I don't have time, I'm focusing on the business, that's going to be my whole life, whatever. And getting back was so hard, like so hard. And for a while, like even getting on a run was difficult for me because I saw who I used to be and who I am today. And it was this like depressive thing where I was like, man, if I would have, or if I could have, or whatever. And for me, it was this mantra of just something every day, whether if I didn't want to run or if I couldn't run, walk. If I couldn't walk, get outside, whatever the thing was, but it's just breaking it down as small as possible to just give yourself the win, give yourself the practice of showing up. Because really it's that first 5 minutes that everybody gets stuck on. It's literally that.
And life is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And that goes for business and that goes for personal, it goes for your mental, spiritual well-being. Like it's a marathon. Like don't get so caught up in like, hey, I gotta, drop this weight in the next, 60, 90 days. It's just a marathon. And I even say like, even like with financial wealth, like in the end, there's things that have happened in my business life that have not been very positive, where I've lost a good amount of money. And then I've had other things where have turned out, pretty decent. But in the end, I just feel strongly that it's a marathon and the best will show up in the end. It's like the law of large numbers. So I have friends who made a killing in crypto, millions of dollars. But those same people also lost a lot of money gambling or doing other stupid shit, right? So in the end, like and some of them were smart, savvy guys that will continue to build wealth. But a very large percentage of those crypto bros that made a lot of money in this marathon of life, they're not going to end up as successful as the guy who just made good decisions, hit singles, doubles, every once in a while, a triple, perhaps a home run, and slowly over the marathon of life, he's going to build greater wealth. If you're looking for that quick hit, like in the end, it all evens out. The law of large numbers, this marathon of life, it's going to bring you to where you deserve to be. At least that's what I believe.
Man, I feel like I got better. I feel like I got better today. If you could, obviously, what are you focused on and what are you driving towards and how can people support you?
Yeah, so right now, mainly focused on launching our next fund, which is really going to be focused on a lot of the stuff we're talking about today. I think there's, physical, mental, longevity, all those things are intertwined. And now you're really starting to see the intersection of artificial intelligence and other technologies starting to play a role in all those categories. So for the past couple months, me and my business partner at my investment fund, we've been working on what we want our thesis to be, where we think we could have the biggest impact and also the biggest ROI for our investors. And so we'll be launching that over the next few months. So that's just been where most of my focus is. I'm super passionate about it. I really think there's a unique opportunity. I also think because of where the markets are at, I know we haven't talked much about like investing and stuff like that, because where the market's at, I think things are really starting to bottom out, especially for like private companies. You're starting to see some of the public stocks starting to come back because, people are risk averse. They don't want to invest in like early stage stuff. But as those stocks go up, they become, you want to buy low and sell high. They become overpriced and people start looking back towards the private market. So I think we're in this cycle where come the end of 2025, when we'll mainly be focused on deploying our capital, I think there's going to be a really unique opportunity, especially within this mental behavioral health longevity space.
Quick double clicking on that. Right now I saw something that came out where the small business index on the stock market had not, whether it had not grown at the same pace or it actually really was like sinking a lot compared to the S&P 500. Could you give context around that? Like what does that show from a macroeconomic scale? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I mean, from a macroeconomic perspective, like I don't think people realize how bad the economy is right now.
Mhm.
I think it, especially if you're interested in investing in like private deals across all sectors, it's pretty damn hard. It's not like the mental health of the psychedelic industry or the cannabis industry. Like, no, I work with tech companies. Like my law firm, we represent, a lot of early stage companies, and some of them are having tremendous traction, but really struggling to raise capital. So there's really, from COVID, when the government printed all of that money, and now with the interest rate hikes, and you have some of the wars going on, we have a president that has trouble formulating a sentence. I mean, the world right now, especially, the United States, is in a pretty dire economic position. It doesn't mean, we're the greatest country in the world, and we will bounce back, and this is all cyclical. To me, that creates a unique investment opportunity. You want to invest low, sell high, right? And right now, I think we're starting to bottom out. I think in the next presidential election, depending what happens, I think we're going to see a big boost to the economy. I think we're going to see interest rates starting to get stabilized. I think we're going to see wars start to simmer down. I think we're going to gain control of our dominance in this world as a country, and that's going to impact the economy. So I think we have very positive times ahead, but currently, I think we're in some very, very tough economic times.
I love having conversations about the cyclical nature, because everybody, from just the way that things are presented in social media, things are presented online, everything is the end of the world, and it always is. But from my understanding, I'd be interested to get your take. 1970 time period has weird ties to where we are now. We were in the Vietnam War. We had questions about the presidential candidate. Really, we had, I don't know, we hadn't come off the pandemic, but basically everything cycle-wise kind of at least my opinion is, kind of plays into that. How much do you invest in terms of trying to understand previous cycles to time out how you see the future going?
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned the 1970s because for the Controlled Substance Act actually was in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
So in from a controlled substances perspective, not, I know you're referring to the economy. We're now in a place where the Controlled Substance Act is really being challenged hardcore in today's environment. So it's like, 1970s, just whenever I hear that, I always think of the Controlled Substance Act, and we're actually in a very opposite time period right now. I feel like we're really starting to be enlightened to, the mishaps and the failure of the war on drugs and things of that nature. But as far as, the cycles in the economy, that's what all of investing is about. At the end of the day, it's about catching the right wave and the right cycle. You could be the smartest investor in the world. If you time something wrong, you're going to get crushed. And you could be the dumbest investor in the world. If you time something right, just by mistake, you can make a shit ton of money. Look at crypto.
Dogecoin.
Crypto's a good example. Like, you don't have to be a genius. If you invested in like 2011 or whenever, you've made a lot of money. If you waited till 2020, you probably didn't make a lot of money.
Probably lost.
Yeah, you probably lost a lot of money. Is one guy smarter than the next? Not really.
It's timing.
And could you have really predicted that cycle? Not really. But everything, to your point about like people saying it's the end of the world, like, it's crazy how cyclical everything is. I mean, you could really just look at a chart and it's like, it just always just goes like this. And it goes back to what Charles was talking about with, don't get too high on the highs or too low on the lows, because life has a way of kind of evening itself out. So just keep moving forward. It's the same thing with the economy. Like, you can't get too down that things are bad. You can't get too high that things are great. Things will even themselves out. And absolutely, as an investor, strategically, if you're not thinking that way, you should not be investing.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's good to know for moving forward. I haven't dove into the investment world yet, but I think after this podcast, people will be much more informed. I get really annoyed by that whole conversation of the world is ending, the world is ending. I mean, it's all pushed through the media. Obviously, we have not a huge part, but we have a part of what the media does in terms of social media. But it's interesting to see the way that people interact with that information and the irrationality that comes from it. From the clients that you work with, do you have to kind of walk people off ledges half the time just to be able to like settle their nerves or something like that?
A lot of what I do is calming people down. Like Charles discussed my conversation with him. But, one thing I'll say, while the world is not ending, like some of the stuff that is happening, it is cause for alarm. I mean, the issue right now at the borders is dire.
Huge. Yeah.
I actually had to stop watching the news because it literally gave me anxiety. The numbers that are coming in undocumented, it's really scary. And like, something does need to happen. I don't want to say it's like the end of the world if we don't do anything, but like, this is a very, very, very alarming situation. And like, the current government isn't really doing anything about it. Like, we need to get this fixed. So there are some really important things. And I think it's important for people to, be aware and, not just be oblivious to. But yes, a lot of what I do, I mean, one of the benefits I have is being a lawyer representing hundreds of clients is I see all the bad shit that happens, like, I tell people when we draft like partnership agreements, it's the same story every time. It's partners getting together. I'm like, hey, we should have this agreement. We're talking about your rights and your responsibilities going in the future. And it's always like, oh, no, it's not how we are. Like, we're good. We're awesome. We're brothers or we're husband and wife. Don't worry about it. And in all marriages start the same way, right? Marriages, no one plans to get divorced when they get married. No one plans to get break apart when they start a partnership. And so a lot of time I have to like convince people like, no, you need to take this partnership agreement very seriously. And I would say almost 95% of the time that we start partnerships, we have to go back to that agreement to figure out, okay, what is everyone's rights and obligations? Because shit goes down, right? And so like in business, I have the benefit of just seeing it over and over and over again, right? And I'm able to, number one, anticipate things for clients. But then on the back end, when bad stuff happens, I'm able to also tell them like, it's not the end of the world. Like, we will get through this. I mean, look, even things like bankruptcy, if a company, we have something called bankruptcy in this world that really is created to give people a clean slate. Like, that's the whole idea of bankruptcy. It's like, okay, you screwed up, you made some mistakes. Let's give you a clean slate. You can start over. So, a lot of what I do, it's about how to handle people. And that's what I learned at, we talked about my roofing company. And one thing I learned is like doing good work, like being a good worker and working hard, like that has value, especially early in your career. Like when I was an early lawyer, as I've gotten older, it's more about how you deal with people.
Mm-hmm.
And I see this so often where people want to make a name for themselves going into a company and they're working their ass off, but they're miserable. They're tainting the culture of the company. But you know what? They're getting a lot of work done and they're crushing it. They get assigned a task, they nail it, they do a great presentation, but everyone in the company hates them and they're making other people show up to work not happy. And all of a sudden the culture of the company gets destroyed. Meanwhile, this person is trying to work their way up the ladder to become a manager. You want to be a manager? If you're a manager, you're dealing with people. Your people skills are far more important than whether you could create a nice Excel file or a nice PowerPoint. So I think, people need to realize that it's all about how you deal with people. And I think I take those learnings, which once again, I made a lot of mistakes on that, and I'm not the best people person, but I've now acknowledged it and I've worked very hard on it. But working with clients, so much of it isn't drafting the contract or dealing with law. So much of it is just giving them the comfort, explaining the situation to them, calming them down in crazy situations. But also, I spend a lot of time helping them anticipate that. Like, for example, we do a lot of cannabis applications and we apply in states to get people cannabis licenses. Inevitably, in almost every state, there's usually litigation afterwards. So I tell people, look, just know it ain't just like you're paying me, I submit an application. Like, we'll take care of everything in front of you. You are in for a freaking battle. Just be prepared for that. So I think it's important, for lawyers or service providers or whatever, to give people warnings on the front end, but then also try to help manage on the back end when those things do happen. Be the voice of calmness that could, bring peace to the situation.
I'm so grateful that I was able to, this isn't the first company, but this is one of the first companies that's had success in my life, that it was a service business, because service businesses give you so much perspective on humans that is invaluable. Like, you learn so much about people through service industries, and it's incredible to see. So one last thing I wanted to touch on. You mentioned this in your LinkedIn, but you have a very big goal of tens of thousands of retreat facilities. I wanted to get your take on how you think you get there.
Yeah. So, like a lot of people ask me like where I see the future of like mental health and psychedelic medicine, in 5 to 10 years. What's really interesting is now with like the advent of AI, I genuinely believe we are now at a time period where in the next 20 years, I think we can really address mental health. I think the biggest challenge with AI, since I think so many jobs are going to be replaced, and Elon Musk talks a lot about this, so many jobs are going to be replaced by AI. And Elon Musk says that we're going to have some sort of, basically people will be on like welfare, but not because like not cheap welfare, like we'll all be wealthy. Like, because we won't have to work, but we're just going to have like, a paycheck that's really high. But the biggest challenge with that is going back to what I was saying about mental health with having purpose.
Yeah.
Will we have purpose if like we're not doing any of the jobs that are here? And I think that's the big determining factor. Can we have purpose even if, we have AI doing a lot of the jobs around us? But I actually think with AI, like we're just become so aware of what's causing mental health issues and have so much technology to address that I'm actually really hopeful for the first time. Because I'll tell you, in the next like several years, like I almost just think like mental health is just going to keep getting worse. Like I hate to say it like that, like SSRIs are not working. psychedelics at the end of the day, and some people might disagree with me, like they'll help people, but like from a durability perspective, like it still takes a lot of work.
Yep.
Like they help in the short term, but from a long-term perspective, oftentimes people fall back in. So, that's why a lot of research is like trying to figure out the durability. Do you need multiple sessions, things like that? But I think we really need to get to a point where obviously these psychedelic compounds need to be approved. So MDMA, FDA will be making a decision on August 11th about MDMA. Hopefully it gets approved. It's going to be a tough one for them, but that'll be for PTSD. They will be the ones who will have to pioneer opening up clinics where these will be delivered. But shortly after them comes Compass Pathway. We've got Beckley SciTech, GH Research. We have all these different companies developing all these different compounds, taking them through clinical trials. So I think as these compounds get approved, you're going to see, tens of thousands of centers being opened up. And not only just new centers, I think more like the current infrastructure, the current clinics and hospitals will start providing these medicines as well. And I think that's the future we're moving towards. And eventually, if we show that those are safe and efficacious, I think we can start getting to a point. By then, cannabis will probably be rescheduled. It'll actually probably be rescheduled, I think, in the next 12 to 18 months. And so at that point with psychedelics, I think we'll be ready to reschedule them, and states will have the right, no longer going against federal law, because right now in cannabis, states are just going against federal law based on the supremacy clause. Federal law is supreme to state. So if you have a cannabis company, it's basically illegal. But in the future, I think with it being with psychedelics eventually getting rescheduled, some statutes being passed, I think they'll defer to the states, and I think states will be able to start to open up centers where they're legally allowed to provide it, not only to the unwell, but also to the well. We're already seeing this in Colorado and Oregon. They've passed some frameworks, but, they're ahead of the federal government. It's still federally illegal. But I think in the next 10 years, we're going to start seeing both FDA, psychedelic drugs, and then also state-authorized programs that are also federally legal for the well, where they could access these medicines.
Very cool. I'm excited for it.
Heck yeah, man.
Want to send us out?
Yeah, thank you for listening to another episode of the My Self Wellness Podcast with the amazing Dustin Robinson. And Dustin, if anybody wants to find you on Instagram or anything, or contact you to possibly invest in one of your funds, is there any links or anything you want to go ahead and put out there?
Yeah, so our website for fund is eaterinvestments.com, ITER investments, that's investments plural.com. You could also look me up on social media. It's Dustin R10, so DUSTIN, the letter R10. And then on my profile for that, I have all my other handles for all my businesses. So yeah, those are probably the best ways to get in touch with me. Also LinkedIn, welcome to shoot me a message.
Very appreciative of you flying out here for this. I got a lot better, and I hope the audience did as well, but appreciate you.
Thank you guys for having me.